Hey guys, and welcome back to another individual Dillon episode, I guess you could call it. Um, I just wanted to give you guys all a little bit of an update through my eyes of how things have been going on the farm and kind of what I've been up to lately. The weather has been changing. It's officially springtime, so now it's super windy outside, which kind of makes things a little less enjoyable for what I've been up to, considering I spent a lot of time outside and whatnot doing various things. But yeah, the wind has been quite intense lately and has been whipping around and so I drive a gator around, an electric gator, and that kind of is what I use to tote around the tools that I need, like weed whackers and leaf blowers and wire cutters and shovels and garden hose, hula hose, rakes, like spare pairs of gloves, screwdriver, all the things that I could possibly need to do little things here and there. But I drive around in the gator, and it's an open top, like just what you'd think about as a John Deere gator. And consequently, because of all the wind and where I'm driving it around at in between orchards and on dirt roads and stuff like that, it kicks up a lot of dirt whenever I'm driving around, and so it's not the most ideal. So thankfully, I do wear like sunglasses or protective glasses that cut down on that getting into my eyes, but it's still not the most pleasant experience, that is for sure. But I will say it does clear up the air quite nicely, which is pretty nice. So like at least it's pretty outside. It's just super windy and obnoxious. But I do love the clear air. It makes everything just look much nicer. But yeah, and it's also getting hotter. It's getting much more hot outside. At the time of you listening to this, it's well into the spring months, but at the time of recording this, we're at the beginning part of spring, and so it's just now starting to turn over and get a little bit hot, and I'm not used to it. I'm still kind of locked into that early of the year cool weather, nice, relaxed, doesn't get anything over like 75 most of the time, and even then 75, when you first feel 75 after being used to 65 all year or for a few months, 75 feels like 105, and so much less now that it's getting hotter than that. So that's another kind of, some days here and there it gets a little less uncomfortable or less comfortable outside than I had been used to, although it is nice to be able to bust out the more summer clothes, the looser, like more free-flowing, breathable clothes, rather than having to wear heavy jackets all the time and all that kind of good stuff. But don't get me wrong, I will say we'll catch a day here and there where it is a little bit damp outside, where it's raining, and then it warrants that thicker clothing, which, speaking of which, I just got some new overalls, which I had never had before in my life. Some Carhartt, like loose fitting overalls. I think they're like canvasy. They're gray and they're super awesome because it prevents me from destroying some of my other clothes that I just been wearing for work when I'm weed whacking and doing other things that are quite messy, especially since it's windy now. So when I weed whack, all the stuff that I'm weed whacking gets blown all over the place if it's a windy day, which is not ideal for the preservation of your clothes or keeping things clean, per se, because if it's wet, if what I'm weed whacking is kind of wet or is very healthy, I guess you could say, it's green, stains really easily on pretty much everything, so not ideal. I had a pair of slip-in Skechers that were just like mesh tennis shoes or whatever that I had just decided, you know what, these are just going to be my work shoes, I think. Well, they had gone from being nice, pretty, like gray, black, and like not white, but like a lighter gray, to absolutely just tainted by green weeds and grass and all that kind of stuff, like unrecognizable. And it was kind of funny because one of these times I went back because they started to actually rip at the bottom. They gave me a good solid like 8 or so months of use out of them, which is way more than they should have, considering they were just like mesh tennis shoes and I was beating them up all the time, every day, at least 5 days a week. And so I was very impressed with their longevity. And Skechers slip-ins, just for anyone out there, are the greatest shoes of all time. They're so comfortable, easy to get on and off. They last you for a long time, and they have every single type of like variety you could ask for, from work shoes to non-slip shoes to mesh tennis shoes, running shoes. It's all good. Not sponsored or anything by Skechers to say anything, but like, if I had to recommend some shoes, those are the shoes I recommend. But anyway, so I went back to Skechers after my shoes had started failing me here not too long ago, and was trying on a bunch of new pairs to get some new work shoes. And I showed one of the guys working there. I was like, hey, you want to see something kind of funny? And I showed him my shoes, and then I showed him my shoes on the rack that were brand new. And I was like, these are the same pair. It's just these have been through some stuff. And so he got a good chuckle out of that, and I got a good chuckle out of that. But then, yeah, I turned around and got some new work shoes, which was very nice. Ones that were a little bit more catered towards actual work, like they're like faux leather or whatever, water resistant, glide step so that it's easier to walk around on, nicer on your feet. Just all good things. So I'm very happy with that purchase. That was very good, in conjunction with my overalls to kind of preserve some of my more normal clothes. Slap those on and it acts as a good barrier, and surprisingly they're not the most they're not like uncomfortable. I was expecting them to be like kind of limiting in terms of like it's not as breathable as, like, let's say sweatpants or something like that, as an extreme example. But they're actually not too bad. The only thing is that they can get kind of hot depending on the day. If I'm in the sun all day long, they're not quite as good as like some like alternatives or whatever. But I would say they're better than jeans just because they're like canvas. But yeah, very happy with those things. I think next up on the list of attire that I'm going to look into getting is replacing my hat. My hat is also suffering from the same thing that my shoes suffered from, which was just a bunch of weed whacking, debris and things like that, sweat. It's all discovered. It's a Carhartt hat. It's like a trucker hat. Very nice hat. I love it. I actually didn't think I was going to like it when I bought it, and then ended up being my daily driver for a long time. So I think that's next up on the list of things to replace. But until it starts to like actually rip or anything like that, I might just see about giving it a good deep scrub, a nice washing, see if that kind of breathes some life back into it. But if not, I think I'm due for a new one to put through the ringer itself. But yeah, as far as what I've been up to on the farm, I have been doing a lot of weed whacking lately because everything's coming back to life from the winter months, and so everything's seeding out. All the weeds are coming back and they're turning green again, and it's all just a mess basically. So I have coined the term for myself as my title, or my job title, as the farm landscaper. That is my preferred title, I guess you could say, and aptly named because I just go around and basically maintain the unmaintained, weeds where there shouldn't be weeds, in between trees. We have a couple pastures that no longer house animals and such, but the weeds get out of control quite quickly, and so I've been going around the borders of that. My dad has allocated some resources to spraying around these areas so that all the weeds are dead by the time I get to them, and yellowed and all that kind of stuff, so they won't come back quite as quick, which is nice. It also makes it way easier to actually like weed whack themselves rather than when they're alive. When they're green, it's a little bit more difficult because they're a little bit more like resilient, a little bit more bendy, I guess you could say. But when they're all fried from getting sprayed, they cut up pretty nicely. And then also with the wind, since they're all dried out and all that good stuff, if it's a windy day, it blows it kind of away and flat, so then it, on top of it being easier to cut down, it looks nicer faster. So that's kind of been my MO, is how can I make this place look and function a little bit better than it did, like auxiliary wise. Like I'm the auxiliary landscaper, I guess you could say, farm landscaper. So I did all that in the pasture. That took a while, and I'll have to do it again as soon as they start, all that stuff comes back. But like I said, since we sprayed it, should give me a good time buffer. There's like a staging ground kind of off to the side of the pasture where we fill up spray rigs and park tractors and house some like stakes for baby trees and stuff like that. There's a hose where we can use for mixing chemicals and all this kind of other jazz. And so there's a bunch of like miscellaneous old equipment that we don't use that's kind of stacked up, and it gets really overgrown. There's some fruit trees as well, and so I went and cut all that down, which that took a while, but I'm thankful. Like I said, it's all been sprayed, so I shouldn't have to do it for a minute, theoretically, knock on wood, fingers crossed, because that, like I said, that took a while, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to get around a lot of that equipment that's in there, especially when it's really overgrown, because weeds grow into all the nooks and crannies, and it's like, it's not ideal to try and just get in there and cut everything back super easily. So hopefully that spray keeps them dead for a while. There's one little spot over by the shop, or one of the shops that we have, that needs to be finished. I didn't quite get to it before it started raining, which it started raining recently, and I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I didn't get to that before it started raining. I mostly got it down, but not quite. I'd say I'm probably about halfway there. I did some leaf blowing as well, just kind of like maintenance type stuff. There's quite a bit of sediment and dirt and dust and rocks and stuff like that, and in and around that staging area that I was talking about, there's some concrete, and so I blew that off so it's a little bit easier to walk on and all that kind of stuff. It looks nicer. Around the back of the shop was really overgrown as well, because not a lot of people go over there. But it started to get aggressively overgrown, so I went over and weed whacked it all down, or as best I could, and then leaf blew it all off, so it wasn't just like cut down weeds sitting on concrete, because there's no point in doing that. Made that look a little nice. I carved out a path to around back that was completely and utterly overgrown. There's a pathway that goes down in between two of our shops into where we grow the pecans, and that was pretty overgrown. And there's a bunch of like just miscellaneous like wood pieces that look like 2x4s almost, and then like chopped up stakes from staking trees in the ground, and there was a shoe and like some rubber gloves, just a bunch of random miscellaneous nonsense. So I cleaned all that up, threw away what I needed to throw away, took the rest to like a burn pile for us to light a flame later down the road. Did all that stuff. I'm trying to think of what else I've been up to. I know the rain, so the last couple of, like, I'd say within the last week, we've had two distinct, very heavy Like, I'm 21 years old, and in my whole entire life, whether I was driving, whether someone else was driving, whether I was at home, outside, in another state, in another town, wherever, I have never experienced the thickness and intensity of rain that I had experienced the other day. It was ridiculous. I was on the way to the gym. It's about 10 o'clock at night. And it was so, not only was the raindrops like large themselves, but the density and sheer amount of raindrops that were falling from the sky in conjunction with their size was insane. I had never seen anything like it. I was driving down one of the main roads here, and it was so thick and so dense and just so intense that it looked like the entire road was completely underwater, which it wasn't, but when the rain was hitting the road, it would bounce so high back up off the ground that it looked like it was completely underwater. And then in addition to that, the car that I was driving, the windshield wipers could not keep up with the rain intensity on the windshield. So it was complete, utter darkness. I could not see through the windshield whatsoever, not even a little bit. And it looked like the road was flooded. And so thankfully it was later at night, so there was like nobody outside driving around, in addition to the fact that they probably didn't want to drive around in that kind of weather. But I was determined. I was on a mission. I was going to the gym at this time. And so I got to experience the most ridiculous rainstorm I've ever been in my entire life. So I feel like I came out on the other end of that a better driver and a more experienced driver, which is very nice. And then consequently, today we had a very similar experience, not as intense, and the duration of the rain was not as long as it was the other day whenever I was driving at night. Today was a little bit earlier in the day. Lots of thunder, lots of lightning. I don't think I've ever, and I probably have, but I just don't remember, but I'm going to say I haven't ever seen lightning during the day when it's like bright outside. So it was like the sky, it was bright outside and it wasn't completely like overcasty and like the clouds weren't covering the sun because it was like a thunderstorm. So it's kind of more splotchy. So it was fairly bright. And then just seeing lightning streak across the sky was kind of trippy. But it was the rain today was very intense, but more typical of like a thunderstorm. It was more of like a splotchy, you drive for about 5 minutes down the road and then it clears up, and then 5 minutes more down the road, it's the thickest rain you've ever been in your entire life, that kind of a thing. It hailed a little bit as well. It was cold enough for some hail to start dropping down. Actually, my grandpa Bill, he sent a picture of a golf ball sized piece of hail, that's very uncommon for around here. You don't usually see that big type of hail. At best, you see like I don't know, I think Sonic has the little ball ice that they get. Basically, that's about the size of the hail that we get. And if we get that kind of sized hail, that's intense where we are. And so the fact that he found a golf ball sized piece of hail is ridiculous. So that just gives you a little perspective on the weather changing around these parts. It's getting to that weird spring, intermittent thunderstorm rain here and there, and then it's 85 degrees the next day, and it's super windy the day after that, and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where we're at weather-wise. And it's supposed to thunderstorm for the next couple days as of recording this as well, which we shall see what that has to entail. Maybe we'll get some more golf ball sized hail or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of the update for right now. I've just been maintaining what I can maintain. It's on a constant cycle because, like I said, spring brings life back into all the weeds and stuff like that. And so I'm sure you'll hear more about the pecans here later in the next batch of episodes when we record sometime in the future, and what that kind of entailed and how that went, and also what I've been up to in regards to the pecans. But yeah, just been weed whacking a bunch. And there was also one more little smaller insignificant thing. There's a gate that leads into like this house area where a house is, and then a staging ground, and then, like, there's an old milk barn, and it's in one of our orchards that we farm, or it's in and around one of the orchards that we farm. But there's a gate, an electric gate that is on a track, and the track gets clogged up with a bunch of weeds when it gets overgrown. So I cut that down the canal line. There's a canal next to the gate, and so cut back a bunch of the weeds there, and come to find out the gate didn't want to open all the way. So what I ended up doing was I did a little investigation, because once I cut back the weeds, I was like, well, the weeds really shouldn't affect the gate opening that much, because it wasn't like super overgrown. It was pretty good. Like, there was a pretty good amount of weeds, but not enough to where, like, I feel like the gate would be hindered. Come to find out, gophers had decided they wanted to start inhabiting the entirety of the track about halfway through the track. And so their mounds had gone over, like, the little metal rod that the gate rides across. And so when the gate would open, it would open halfway and then stop, and then want to close again because it thought it reached the end of its track. So took a shovel, shoveled off all the dirt, and then, like, shoveled past even farther, just to make sure that the gophers got the point. Hey, don't be doing that. That's not good. And so, knock on wood, now the gate works just fine. So, just another little maintenance thing that I had been running into. But yeah, as far as everything like that goes, that's my little update. And I hope you guys enjoy these little updates periodically. And if you do, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and always stay curious.